July 14, 1944. Southern Europe, 30,000 feet above enemy territory. First, Lieutenant Evald Swanson tightened his grip on the controls of his B-17 Flying Fortress, Mispa, as the formation approached Budapest. This was his 18th combat mission. Below them lay one of the most heavily defended cities in Axis-controlled Europe. More than 200 German anti-aircraft guns surrounded the capital, protecting oil refineries, rail hubs, and factories that fueled the Nazi war machine. Black flak bursts already filled the sky. Mispa flew in a 60-aircraft formation from the 483rd Bomb Group, part of the 5th 10th Air Force. Their job was simple and deadly. Fly straight, hold formation, drop bombs, and hope they survive the trip home. By mid-1944, bomber crews knew the truth. Statistics said they had less than a 50% chance of completing a full tour. Entire crews vanished on missions like this. Some aircraft were hit so hard they disintegrated before anyone could bail out. No fighter escort could save you from flak. Only luck could. At 9:42 a.m., the bomb bay doors opened. The aircraft shuddered as tons of explosives dropped away. For a brief moment, the crew felt relief. The worst part flying straight and level over the target was over. Then the sky exploded. An 88mm flak shell detonated directly in front of Mispa. The blast ripped the nose clean off the aircraft. In an instant, the bombardier and navigator were gone killed. Without warning, the bomb sight vanished. The instrument panel vanished. The plexiglass nose vanished. Where the front of the aircraft had been, there was only open sky. Freezing air at -40 degrees roared into the cockpit like a hurricane. Papers, debris, and shattered metal vanished into the slipstream. The bomber pitched violently upward as its balance collapsed. Swanson looked forward and saw nothing. No gauges. No control column, no windshield. Just torn aluminum and exposed steel control cables, whipping violently in the wind. A B-17 was never meant to fly like this. At any moment, those cables could snap or the aircraft could flip into an unrecoverable stall. Somehow, Swanson forced the bomber level. Behind him, the surviving crew rushed forward through the fuselage. What they saw defied belief. The airplane was literally being held together by cables, stretched tight across empty space. Then came the second hit. Another flak shell struck engine number 2. The engine exploded in flames. Now Mispa was flying on 3 engines, with massive drag, a destroyed nose, and no instruments bleeding speed and altitude. The bomber began slipping behind the formation. Within minutes, she was alone. German fighters often waited for moments like this, but none appeared. Flak had done its work. Inside the aircraft, the crew made a desperate decision. Someone had to man the cables. Crewmen climbed into the torn-open nose section and wrapped their gloved hands around the steel control lines. One man pulled the rudder cable. Another held elevator tension. They coordinated movements by shouting over the roar of the wind. When they pulled left, the aircraft turned left. When they pulled back, T-nose rose. They weren't flying a bomber anymore. They were physically holding it in the air. The strain was brutal. The cold cut through their gloves. Fingers went numb. Arms burned with exhaustion. Every correction had to be precise. Too much force could rip the aircraft apart. Too little meant loss of control. As the bomber limped westward, another problem emerged. The tail section was flexing. Structural damage spread through the fuselage. Stress fractures crept toward the empennage. If the tail separated, the aircraft would instantly tumble into a flat spin. No parachute could save anyone at that speed. Swanson made the call. The crew would bail out. One by one, men moved toward the waist gun openings. Each man hesitated because every jumper meant fewer hands on the cables and less control, but staying meant certain death. The first crewman jumped. Then, another. Each departure made the aircraft harder to fly. The bomber dipped and shuddered violently after every exit. By 9:54 a.m., only 5 men remained aboard. Still, the aircraft flew. More jumped. Finally, only Swanson and his co-pilot were left. The co-pilot looked at him, silently asking the question neither wanted to say. Swanson nodded. The co-pilot clipped on his parachute and jumped. Swanson stayed. He stayed to give his crew time so the bomber's crash wouldn't lead German patrols straight to the parachutes drifting below. For several minutes, Mispa flew with one man aboard, barely controllable. Barely alive. At 10 a.m., Swanson unbuckled. The moment he stood, the bomber pitched downward. He fought through the fuselage, clipped on his parachute, and leapt into the open sky. Seconds later, Mispa broke apart in mid. The B-17 slammed into a forest and exploded. Swanson survived the jump but landed hard in trees, shattering his leg. German troops captured him within minutes. Over the next hours and days, every surviving crewman was captured. All of them lived. 8 men survived a bomber that should have killed everyone aboard. They spent 9 months as prisoners of war until liberation in April 1945. Evald Swanson survived the war, returned home, raised a family, and rarely spoke of what happened that day. But for 10 minutes over Hungary, a bomber with no nose, no cockpit, no instruments, and no chance stayed airborne because its crew refused to give up. They didn't beat the odds, they defied physics. And because they did, 8 men came home.